Hello guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. So in this video we will look at how to add the functionalities to the player controls we were adding in the last video. So in the last video we separated the player controls to a separate component. Now in this video we will add all the functionalities required. First let's give the player the play and pause functionality. There is a playing prop in the React player, so we need to move that to a state value. So for that let's change the playing prop to a state value. First we'll import the use state. So use state is a hook which allows us to control the state. So into this we will add a variable of state and a function of set state to set the state. So all our player state would be inside this state object. We'll add the playing state first. So let's keep the playing as true for now, and let's change the playing prop to the playing state. Before that let's spread out the state. So let's use destructuring to spread out the state, and we'll take the playing value from there. Let's give the playing value to the playing prop in React player. We need to play and pause the player from the controls. For that we need a prop. We'll pass a prop called onPlayPause to player controls, and to this we will give a handler of handle play pause. So let's declare the handle play pause function. So it basically toggles the playing state. So let's spread out the state and set playing as not state.playing, so that it toggles between the state. Now let's add the onPlayPause prop to the player controls. In the player controls we have the play button in the middle as well as the bottom controls. First we will add it to the play icon button on the middle control. So for that we will add the onPlayPause to the onClick function, and also to the lower controls we will add the onPlayPause prop. Yeah, there's our button. Let's add the onPlayPause to the onClick. Next we need to get the onPlayPause from the props. So let's go on top and let's destructure the props. Now we will get the onPlayPause. Let's check it out. Yeah, now it's pausing and playing, but we need to toggle the icons. So for that we need to import the pause icon. We have already imported that in the last video, so let's use that. If you can import that from the material UI icons. We also need to pass a playing prop to player controls, so that we can check for that playing, and let's import it to the controls. Now for the icon, play arrow icon, we can check with the playing. If it is playing we'll use the pause icon, otherwise we'll use the play arrow icon. Let's also give it for the lower control. Let's take a look at it now. As the player is playing we see the pause. When you click on it, it goes to the play icon, and vice versa. Next we will add the fast forward and rewind functionality. For that actually we need a reference of the player. So we need to provide a ref to the player, as there are some methods for fast forwarding and rewinding. We will import the use ref from React. Let's declare a variable of player ref and we will give a useref of null. Let's pass the player ref to the ref prop of React player. Now we will add two prop to the player controls. One is on rewind. For handling the rewind, we will give a value of handle rewind. Let's declare that function now. For rewinding, we will use the seek2 method from the player. For that, we will use the player ref and we will access the seek2 method. Seek2 method helps us to seek to a particular time in the video. We can use the player ref.current.getCurrent time function. So this function gives us the current time and we will minus 10 from it, so that we will rewind 10 seconds back. Let's also add the handle fast forward functionality. So this is also used as the same seek2 method. Here, instead of decreasing 10, we will add 10 to it, so that it will fast forward 10 seconds. Let's add the on fast forward prop and we will give the handle fast forward handler. Now let's add these two to the player controls. So we'll import those props. Now let's give the on rewind prop to the button in the middle, the rewind button in the middle. Let's pass it to the on click. We'll also pass the on fast forward method to the on click of the fast forward button. Let's take a look at now. Some issues there. Let's take a look at it. Oh, the on click is not there for rewind. Let's take we are given everything. We are using the current prop get current time plus 10. Let's check once more. Yeah, now it's fast forwarding and it's also rewinding back. So that functionality is working now. Now let's add the mute functionality to the player. So we need a new state for handling the muted player prop in React player. So we'll add a new state muted and we'll keep it true for as initial state. Let's add it to the React player. Let's replace the true with muted. For the player controls, we will add a muted prop and we'll pass in the muted. Next, we need to toggle the muted and unmuted state. For that, we will use a on mute prop in the player controls and we'll pass in a function of handle mute. So let's write this function. It's also basically setting the muted state to not muted, so that it toggles between the muted and unmuted state. Now let's copy this muted and on mute prop and let's add it to the player controls. So in our lower controls, we have the volume up icon. So we will add the on mute prop to the on click of the icon button. Next, we need to check whether the state is muted and change the icons. first we need to import the icon. We will use a volume of icon to show the mute state. Let's import the volume of icon from material UI icons. If the state is muted, we will show the volume of icon. Otherwise, we will show the volume of icon. Let's take a look. Now we have the volume of icon as the initial state of muted is true. When we click on that, it changes to volume up icon and vice versa. Next, we need to add the functionality to the volume slider. So we will add a on change prop to the volume slider and on change committed. The on change is the action that takes place when we seek the slider, and on change committed takes place when we take the key up from the slider. So we'll pass in an on volume change prop and on volume seek down prop to the player controls. So let's add it to the player controls. We need to add this in the app.js as well. So in the app.js, in the player controls, we will add these two props. For on volume change, we will add a handle volume change handler, and for on volume seek, we will have a handle volume seek down handler. Now we will write the handle volume change function. So the material UI slider actually gives an event as well as a new value as the argument to the callback function. So this new value is the value that comes when seeking the slider. We need to add the volume state as well. This is the state with which we are going to handle the volume seeking. So let's put it to 0.5 at first. Now we need to add that volume state to the state destructuring, and also we need to add that to the React player. Now let's continue with the handle volume change function. So for the handle volume change, we will use a pass float to pass the new value function and divide it by 100. We need the volume to be between 0 and 1, but our slider is between 0 to 100. And for also the muted state, we will check with whether the new value is 0 and make it true and false. Next we will write the handle volume seek down function. This also takes in the same parameters, and we will add the same set state function to it. Now let's add the volume prop to the player controls. Let's add that to the player controls component. We will give that to the volume slider. Let's change the default value and make it value prop, and we will give volume into 100 as our slider is from 0 to 100. This only works when it is 0 to 100. That's why some issue is occurring. Let's take a look at what is the issue. It's not seeking. Let's go into the app.js. We are handling the volume seek down, volume change. We are giving the pass float. try it again. Yeah, now I think there was some issue with the reloading. Now it's okay. Yeah, now we can see the volume and it's being changed. I have not added the audio so that there's no copyright issue or something. Now we will add the playback rate functionality. So for the playback rate functionality, we also need to add a new state called playback rate. So first we will add the playback rate prop to the React player, and we will give it a state of playback rate. Let's add that state. Yeah, we will give the playback rate as 1.0. Let's add it to the destructure as well. And let's add it to the player controls. Now we need a prop to handle the playback rate, so we'll use a on playback rate change prop, and we will give it a value of handle playback rate change. So this is the handler we are going to use to handle the playback rate change. Let's copy it and let's define it. So here actually what we have to do is like we'll get a rate from the player control, and we will set that rate to the playback rate. Oh, we forgot to add the const. So now we'll go into the player controls and we'll add that prop. Let's go down and let's in the button for the playback rate pop over, we will give that. So we are given the on playback change, but we will use an arrow function as we need to pass in the rate. So this rate we will get in the handler in the app.js. Now we will import that on playback rate change and the playback rate prop. Let's add the playback rate to the rate. Actually, like, let's find the typography showing the rate. Yeah, that one next. We will change that to the playback rate. Let's also check the color and with the playback rate. If the rate is equal to the playback rate, we will show the secondary color, that means it's active, and otherwise we will show the default color, which will be black. So let's take a look at it now. Yeah, we can see the playback rate. Yeah, we can see the active playback rate. When we press on, let's fast forward a little bit, and when we press on 2, yeah, it's playing fast, and 1.5, now 0.5, it's slower, and normal rate. So that functionality is also added. Next we'll work on the full screen button. So let's go to app.js. We have installed a library called ScreenFull in the installation video, so let's import that. ScreenFull helps us to handle full screen for all types of browsers, as the implementation is different in different browsers. For the full screen functionality, we will take a ref of the div element that encloses the React player and player controls. So we are going to make that particular div full screen so that we get our controls as well as the player. We are going to name it player container ref. Right, let's give it to the ref prop of div. Now we'll add a prop to the player controls. We'll add it on toggle full screen prop, and the handler we will give toggle full screen. Let's define the handler. So in this, what we are going to do is we are going to use screen full.toggle function, and we'll pass in the ref. So let's add the on toggle to player controls. We'll give it to the full screen button. So on the on click we'll add the on toggle full screen. Let's add it to the prop as well. Yeah, now let's look in the browser. When we click on the full screen, we get the full screen. We can close the full screen using the escape key. We can toggle it again we can close it using the full screen button. Yeah, now we have our full screen functionality. Now we will look at our main seekbar that is used to seek the time. So for that we have a on progress prop in React player, so we can pass a handler to that called handle progress. Let's define that prop. So here we have a callback with a change state argument. So change state is actually the state that changes when the time increases in the player. So we can set the state, and we'll spread out the state as well as change state, because some of the states in this player is altered when the on progress function happens. We can console log the change state to identify that. Now let's go into the browser and inspect it. So you can see that we have some of the items being changed, like played, loaded, played seconds, etc. So these are the states that are being changed. Let's add the played state for now. That is the only thing we need, and we'll set it to 0. Let's add it to the destructured thing as well. Now we'll pass it as a prop to the player controls. Let's add the prop. Here in the Preto slider, we'll change the default value to value and give the played into 100, as this played also is from 0 to 1. Now when we fast forward, we can see that the seekbar is moving. We have not yet handled the seekbar, so let's handle the Preto slider. We have an on change prop in the Preto slider, so this can be used to handle the changes in the slider, and we'll pass in a prop of on seek, and also we have the on mouse down. Here we will use this to control the seek state, so we can pass in an on seek mouse down, and also we have the on change committed, which happens when the on mouse is up. So for this we will give a name of on seek mouse up. So actually for the volume slider we have given on volume seek down for on change committed. Let's change that to on volume seek up. So that's a mistake actually, so we can change that back. Now let's copy all these on seek mouse down and on seek mouse up. We can add that to the incoming props. we'll copy all those, and in the app.js we'll paste it in the player controls. Now we need to give handlers for all this. We'll give the onSeek a handler of handle seek change. For the onSeek mouse down, we will give handle seek mouse down. And for onSeek mouse up, we will give handle seek mouse up. Now we need to define all these handlers. So let's go on top and define these functions. First we'll define the handle seek change. So it is a slider, so we get the event and the new value just as we got in the volume slider. We will assign the state to the played state. So to the played state we will pass float the new value and divide it by 100. As this slider is also from 0 to 100 and played only takes from 0 to 1, we need to do this. Now we will have the handle seek mouse down. Here we will actually set a state of seeking true. So this is a state which we have not defined yet. Let's go and define it. Let's keep it as false now. We will add it to the destructured state as well. So we are going to use seeking to stop the handle progress when that seek is done. So we don't need to set a state when the seeking is true. So let's check whether seeking is false, and only if seeking is false we will set the state for the handle progress. Otherwise what will happen is when we drag, it will get updating the state on each handle progress and we will not be able to drag properly. It will always reset to the time that is being changed in the handle progress. So we need something like that. Now we will do the handle seek mouse up. Here also we will get the event and the new value, and we are going to set the seeking state to false here, as we have already finished dragging, and using the player ref we will seek to the new value by 100. So now we can go to the that particular time. We need to correct spelling of handle seek mouse down. Let's take a look. Yeah, now we are able to seek properly. We are also able to drag, and now the seek bar is changing and the video is also changing to that time. In our lower part of the controls we are showing the current time and the duration. So let's get that. For that we'll declare a current time variable and set it to the playerref.current.getCurrentTime. So we'll get the current time from this. Also we can get the duration. We'll check the playerref.current first, and if it is present we'll call the playerref.current.getDuration. So we'll get the duration of the video that is playing. If that is false, just like the current time, we will set a 0000 value. Now we need to calculate the elapsed time and the total time. So what we'll do is we'll declare a variable called elapsed time, and we will use a function called format, and we will format the current time as the elapsed time. And also we have the total duration. So this is also we use the format duration. So let's write the format function outside the app function. the format function takes in seconds as the argument, so we pass in seconds, and we'll check if that is not a number or not. If it is not a number, we'll return 00. If it is valid, we'll pass it to the new date function and multiply it by 1000 and assign it to a variable called date. Then we will take the hour from it using date.getUTC hours, and also minutes and the seconds using getUTC minutes and getUTC seconds. The second value we will convert it to a string using toString, and we have a method in the string called paddStat, with which we can limit the digits in the string. So we will pass in 2 and the 0 as the padding that needs to be given if there is no 2 digits. And if we have the hour, we will return the hour, and also the minute. We'll add the paddStat to the minute as well, and we'll pass the seconds. And if there is no hour, then we will return the minute at the seconds. Now let's give the elapsed time and total duration to the player controls as a prop. Now in the player controls, we will add those props. So in the player controls, we'll import those props, elapsed time and total duration. Now let's come back to the bottom controls. So in the bottom controls, we have declared a typography button which 0505 will replace that with elapsed time divided by the time duration. So this is the normal format we see in the video players. Now let's take a look. So here's some error. Something is not defined. Now let's go back to the app.js. We have not defined the handle seek mouse down. Oh, there's a spelling mistake, so let's correct that. Let's take a look. Yeah, now our player is playing. We see the time. When we seek, we see the time changing. Now we need to add the elapsed time to the label component of the slider. So let's go into the label component. So let's make it an arrow function and pass a props. We'll make it a component and we'll spread the props, and we will give it a value prop of elapsed time. So this will be taken as the title. Now we can see that the elapsed time is coming on top of the seekbar. Next we will add the functionality to toggle between the remaining time and the normal time. For this we'll add a new state called time display format, and we'll have a function of set time display format to handle it. We have use the use state and initialize the initial state as normal. And in the elapsed time, we will check with the time display format. If it is equal to normal, then we will give the format of current time. Otherwise, we will add a minus sign and we will format the duration minus current time. So we will subtract the current time from the duration. Format is wrong, so we'll change the spelling. Yeah. Now what we have to do is we have to write a prop to the player controls for that. So we will have a on change display format prop, and the handler will give us handle change display format. So let's define that. here we will set the state. We will make the time display format, we will check the time display format for normal. If it is normal, we will set it as remaining. Otherwise we will set it as normal. So let's check. We have made one issue. We have not added to player controls, so let's add that. So this is on click of the typography text button. So we will add it to the on click. Now let's try it. Let's click. It's not changing for some reason. Let's come back. Let's check the on change display format function again. Let's go to the app.js and we'll check the handle change display format. What's the issue? Oh, we have used another state for it, so let's use the set time display format instead of set state. So we will remove that and we make it set time display format. Okay, let's check it now. Now when we see, yeah, we can see the remaining time and we can toggle back to the normal time. So that functionality is also over now. Now we need to add the bookmark functionality. For that we will add the proper phone bookmark to the player controls. For the handler we will use an add bookmark. So let's go and define this add bookmark function. So before defining the add bookmark, let's add a new state. So we will declare a new state. So this will be bookmarks and we will use a set bookmarks function to set the state, and in the use state we will pass the initial state as an empty array. Now we can declare the add bookmark function. So before that we need to have the UI for the bookmark part. So for that we will add a grid below our player container div. So we'll add a container prop and we'll give a style of margin top of 20 so that it's separated from the player. We'll give a spacing of 3 so there is spacing between the bookmark items. So we'll map the bookmarks as it is an array, and we'll give a grid item inside it. So let's give a key of index. Inside this we are going to use the paper from material. Let's make it as a specific import. So for the paper is actually a card like surface in material. So something you can see in material design, like we use elevation and properties like that in material design to have a card like effect. So next, inside the paper we'll give an image and we'll set the cross origin as anonymous, so that as the video URL is from outside, we need to set it as anonymous. And for the typography we'll set as bookmark at 00. So this is just to show at what time the bookmark occurred. So now let's actually declare another canvas as well. So we'll get the canvas, a ref of canvas ref. We need canvas to capture the image of the video, so we'll define the canvas ref with the use ref. Now in our add bookmark, we can use this canvas ref. So let's make the canvas ref to a variable called canvas, and we'll give it a width of 160 and height of 90, so we get a aspect ratio of 16:9. Next we'll get the context of the canvas using canvas.getContext of 2D. We can draw an image on the context using draw image, and we'll give the player.current.getInternalPlayer. This will give the video div of the current player, and we give the starting and ending starting origin of 0 and 0, and we give the canvas width and height. So this is the image is drawn with the width and height that we have given. Now we will pass use canvas.toData URL to get the URL of the image, and we paste it there. We will make the canvas width and height to 0 after that, so that it's not displayed in our UI. Now we need to set the bookmarks. We can spread the bookmarks array so that we get a copy of it, and we pass an object of time of current time, a display key of elapsed time, and then it has an image key of the image URL. We have not declared the grid, so let's go and import the grid. We also need to declare the player ref instead of player. So let's go and add this to our bookmark UI. So in the typography bookmark at, we will change it to bookmark.display. So this is the display time, that is the elapsed time. And for the image source, we will change to bookmark.image. Now in the we need to click and go to that particular time. So on the paper we have an on click handler, so we can add a new handler called add a function called playerref.current.seek2, and we'll seek to that particular time in the bookmark. So let's add it to the player controls as well. We'll add the on bookmark prop to the player controls, and we will add it to the top controls where we have the bookmark button. So to the buttons on click, we'll pass the on bookmark prop. Now let's take a look. Now when we click on bookmark, it's taking a screenshot, but it's showing an error, failed to execute toData URL. Tainted canvases may not be exported. So this issue actually occurs because our video URL comes from another origin. Actually we are using something from the internet, and that URL may have blocked it. So what we can do is, for the React player, let's go into app.js. For the React player, actually there is a config prop. So inside the config prop we have a file, and we can specify its attributes. We will make the cross origin as anonymous here also, so that there's no issue with another origin URL. Now we'll try with it. When we add bookmark, yeah, we can see the bookmark at 151. Let's add another and another. Now let's try clicking on some bookmark. Mark at 335. Yeah, now it's jumping to those bookmarks when we click. So that functionality is also done now. As the last functionality, we will hide the controls when the user is idle. We only need to show the controls when the mouse is hovered over the player. So what we can do is, we can declare a controls ref. We'll give a use ref of null, and in the player controls component we will pass the controls ref as a prop to the ref. So ref is a prop now in player controls. for getting this player to accept a ref, we need to use the forward ref from React. Forward ref enables the child components reference, so that's why we need the forward ref. So whatever custom component we have given, if we need to add ref to a particular element in that, we need to use the forward ref. So we can enclose our component in forward ref. Just after the export default, we'll give forward ref. We'll open the forward ref and we'll close it after the end of the component. Now the forward ref actually accepts two parameters. One is the props and the second is the ref. So this is the ref that we are passing, and what we'll do is for the div, for the ref we will pass the ref from the forward ref. Now let's go into the app.js. Let's go to the div containing the player container ref. Here we will add a handler for the on mouse move. So to the on mouse move, we will give a handle mouse move handler. And let's declare that handle mouse move. Here we will use the controls ref and we will set the style of the controls ref's visibility property of the style to visible. So we need to show the controls when the mouse is moved over it, so we need to set it to visible. We'll also set a count to 0. So we are using a count to actually check for the idle time. This is the best method actually, instead of setting a timer or something. So let's declare a count of 0 at the top outside the function, so that there's no state handling or anything. This count is just for calculating the idle time. We can use the count increment for calculating the idle. Now what we need to do is we need to go into the handle progress function. Here we will add a check of count greater than 3. So this check actually look if after 4 seconds we will change the visibility to hidden, so that the controls are hidden. And we will set the count to 0. So once hidden, the count is set to 0 again. And if it is not hidden, that is if the visibility is visible, then we will increment the count actually. So only when it's visible we need to increment the count, otherwise every time it will be incrementing. We need not do that, so we'll just increment the count when the visibility is visible. So now we have the logic for that. So this is something called timed update. So we have kept the visibility as visible. We have set the count to 0, and when the count is greater than 3, that is after 4 seconds, we'll make it hidden, and after if the visibility is visible, we will increment the count. So that will do with the hiding the controls functionality. Now let's take a look. Count is undefined. Let's go back. We have not defined the count, so let's define it. Now let's take a look at again. Yeah, let's keep the controls for some time. Now it's hiding. Yeah, let's move. When we move, the controls is coming back. Let's move it outside the control, and after 4 seconds it's hiding again. So that functionality is also over now. So I think we have come to an end of the whole functionality. We have added bookmark, the forward, rewind, etc., play pause button, forward, rewind, the seekbar functionality, the volume slider functionality, the time display format we have changed, the playback rate we have added, and also we have added the full screen functionality. So with that, we have come to the video player with custom controls series, and if you look at it, you can find that there is no other series similar with having custom controls. So if you like my content, please subscribe to it, and if you need notifications for the new content, please press on the bell icon. Thank you. Take care.